The cafeteria was louder than usual. Metal trays clanged, boots echoed, and laughter bounced off the gray walls like gunfire. New recruits filled the seats, stuffing their faces, throwing jokes, some slapping each other's backs as they boasted about their first week of training. Then, the door creaked open. He walked in slowly. His back was slightly bent, his beard gray, and his uniform looked like it hadn't seen sunlight in years. His boots didn't stomp like the others, they shuffled. The entire hall turned for just a second before everyone burst into fresh laughter. Did someone's grandpa get lost? A voice from the corner shouted. Another said, maybe he's the new yoga instructor. The old man didn't look up. He just carried a small tin plate and quietly moved toward an empty table. He took his seat without a word. A spoon trembled slightly in his hands as he served himself the same bland lentils and boiled rice the others were groaning about. Private Armand, one of the newer recruits, paused while sipping his tea. He watched the old man closely. Unlike the others, he didn't laugh. There was something strange about the silence around the old man. Even though people joked, no one sat near him. It was as if an invisible barrier kept them all away. Armand, whispered Zahid, a fellow recruit sitting beside him. Do you ever seen him before? No, Armand replied, not taking his eyes off the old man. Maybe he's just staff. Looks like he needs a nurse more than a uniform. Armand didn't reply. He stood up and walked slowly toward the old man's table. A few heads turned, curious. He approached carefully, as if disturbing something ancient. Double quotes, sir? Mind if I sit here? Armand asked politely. The old man looked up for the first time. His eyes weren't weak. In fact, they were unsettlingly sharp, clear, piercing, and cold. The kind of eyes that had seen things no one ever talked about. But he gave a faint nod, and Armand sat. I'm Private Armand. Just joined a week ago, he said, trying to keep his tone light. The old man gave a small grunt. You're still figuring out where the bathrooms are then? Armand chuckled awkwardly. Yeah, pretty much. They sat quietly for a while. Armand noticed that no one else had dared to approach. Some whispered, others stared. But one moment changed everything. The old man rolled up his sleeve slightly to scratch his arm. That's when it happened. Someone from another table gasped. Did you see that? He whispered to his friend. What, on his wrist? That tattoo? It's not just a mark. That's from Unit Z. What? No way. That unit was disbanded decades ago. I'm telling you, that symbol 3 black lines crossing a circle, it's the one they say only operatives from Z11 got. I saw it once in a book. The title was classified before it got pulled. The whispers spread like wildfire. The laughter died down. One by one, soldiers looked toward the old man, now no longer amused. What's Unit Z? Armand asked quietly. The old man didn't answer. He finished his food, pushed the plate away, and looked Armand dead in the eye. Nothing you'll find in your little rule book, he said calmly. Then he stood and left the hall as quietly as he had entered. Later that evening, in the dorms, the silence continued. Even the loudest recruits didn't dare to mock anymore. Everyone felt that something wasn't right. They searched online, asked senior officers, even messaged old connections. But every time they typed Unit Z or Z11 tattoo, the result was the same. No records, no matches, no history. Only one result popped up: an old military forum with a thread that had been shut down years ago. The cached version read, "The ghosts of Unit Z don't retire, they disappear." Armand sat on his bed, staring at the ceiling. That man, he didn't walk like a soldier anymore. But those eyes, they belonged to someone who'd seen too much, maybe more than anyone in this whole base. He remembered how people laughed when he walked in, but after they saw the tattoo, no one said another word. The next morning, Armand woke early. He stepped outside for air and saw the old man walking near the training grounds, alone, before sunrise. No one else was up yet. Armand followed at a distance. The old man did slow stretches, deep breathing, and finally sat cross-legged, staring at the horizon. After some time, Armand gathered the courage to approach again. You come out here every morning. The old man didn't move. I do now. Why? The old man looked at him. Because quiet helps me remember. Remember why I should never go back to who I used to be. That sentence hung in the air like mist. Armand sat down beside him, unsure what to say. But something about the stillness between them felt heavier than most conversations. People said your tattoo is from a secret unit, Armand said carefully. Say a lot of things, the old man replied. So is it true? I've lived long enough to see truth become classified and lies turn into speeches, the old man said. Don't worry about the past. Worry about what they're preparing you for. Armand was about to ask more, but then someone shouted his name from the distance. It was Zahid waving from the building. Armand, orders came in. Morning drills moved to 0600. You'll be late. Armand stood up. I hope we can talk again. The old man simply nodded. By the time Armand ran back, the base had come alive again. Loud boots, shouting instructors, the sharp whistles of command. But the mood had shifted. Officers were being unusually formal. The usual yelling was replaced by soft murmurs among senior ranks. In the command center, Major Haroun stared at a photo that had been emailed from an unknown source. It showed the old man from decades ago, standing in a black uniform next to a foreign general. The back of the image had one word: exile. He turned to the captain. Get me the base archives. Pull everything related to Unit Z11. But, sir, the captain replied, confused, those files are sealed by defense protocol. Then unseal them, Major Harun said, before it's too late. Meanwhile, in the mess hall, recruits were still whispering about what they saw. Zahid leaned toward Arman during lunch and said, you know, I heard someone say the tattoo means he was the last surviving agent from a unit that disappeared during a secret war. They were all declared dead, except one. Arman shook his head. That can't be. If he's that dangerous, why let him roam free? Maybe he's not free, Zahid whispered. Maybe he's being watched. Or maybe he's watching us. That night Arman couldn't sleep. He sat on his bunk, the whispers swirling in his head. Who was that man really? Why did even the officers grow quiet around him? And what exactly had that tattoo meant? He decided he needed answers. Tomorrow, he'd wake even earlier. He had to know who this man truly was. Because something told him, this wasn't just about a forgotten soldier. It was about a secret war no one ever admitted happened. And the last man who knew the truth had just walked into their base. Before the morning bugle echoed across the barracks, Arman was already dressed. The air was cold, sharp against his skin, but his thoughts were hotter than ever. All night, images of the old man's face kept flashing in his mind. Those steady eyes, the calm voice, the cryptic words, and that tattoo. That strange, haunting tattoo that had silenced an entire hall full of young men who thought they feared nothing. He made his way toward the training grounds, hoping the old man would be there again. The base was still asleep, save for the soft chirping of crickets and the occasional clank of chains swaying from the pull-up bars. Then, in the distance, he saw him, sitting still, the same exact place, the same posture, almost like a monument that had been there for decades. Arman approached, slowly, cautious but not fearful. The old man didn't turn. He just said, without looking, couldn't sleep. Huh. Arman sat down beside him. No, sir. Too many questions. You won't like the answers, the old man muttered. I'd rather know something hard than live with silence. There was a pause. Then, the old man finally turned and looked at him. You want to know what the tattoo means? Arman nodded. It's not just a mark, it's a sentence. A sentence. For the things we've done, things no soldier should have been asked to do. Arman's breath caught. The cold didn't seem to matter anymore, but who asked you to do it? The old man looked toward the rising sun. People in suits, people who smile for cameras, people who disappear when things go wrong. Arman stayed quiet. He didn't dare interrupt. I was 17 when I joined, the old man said. Too young to understand politics, too proud to ask why. They took us from training, put us through a program that didn't officially exist. No names, just numbers. We weren't soldiers, we were weapons. Arman stared. Unit Z, Z11, he corrected. The final squad. Only 10 of us passed the final test. Only 5 survived the first mission, and by the end, only I was left. A shiver ran down Arman's spine. What happened? They sent us to clean up after their messes. Political blunders, unofficial operations. We weren't told why, only how. We were the ones who erased stories before they made the headlines. Why would they do that to their own men? The old man gave a bitter smile. Because it's easier to deny a ghost than bury a body. Just then, loud footsteps echoed in the distance. An officer was walking toward them. It was Major Harun. His face was pale, his hands trembling slightly as he held a folder tightly. Under his arm, sir, he said to the old man with a forced calmness. I need to speak with you privately. The old man didn't move. Anything you want to say, you can say here. Harun hesitated. Then, reluctantly, he opened the file. Is this your signature? He asked, holding out a scanned document. The old man took one look and nodded. This confirms you were the last active agent under Operation Black Wall. Yes. The protocol requires you to report all recent movements. Why did you come here? This base isn't on any rotation schedule. The old man leaned back slightly. Because your intelligence reports missed something. I'm here to stop it. Harun swallowed. Stop what? The old man stood up. It's not in your file. Because they never told you, but he's still alive. Harun blinked. Who? The target. The one I failed to kill. The one who escaped when the program collapsed. He's resurfacing. Arman stood too, his voice low but full of tension. Who's he talking about, sir? Harun didn't answer. He was too stunned. We were told that mission ended 23 years ago, that the subject was confirmed dead. They lied, the old man said. And now I'm here to finish what they made me start. Harun shook his head. You can't operate alone anymore. You're not cleared. I'm not asking for clearance, the old man interrupted. I'm not asking for permission. I'm warning you. Something's coming, and this base is not ready. Then he walked away. Just like that. No salute. No fear. Just calm steps and silence. Arman turned to Harun. Sir, what's really going on? Harun looked at him, his face a mix of confusion and fear. You're not cleared for that, Private. But Arman wouldn't let it go. That evening, while most recruits were doing drills, Arman snuck into the archives. He had memorized the name on the file Operation Black Wall. He found the section marked classified, restricted physical access only. There was a keypad. He didn't have the code, but he waited. 2 hours later, as the hall cleared, he saw the captain walking by. Arman acted quickly. Sir, he said, pretending to hold a clipboard. Major Haroun said, I need to cross-check some data on Unit Z. He's waiting for the results. The captain hesitated. That's locked, he gave me access, but I don't know the code. The captain frowned. You shouldn't be here. Please, sir. Just 5 minutes, he said. It's urgent. With a sigh, the captain entered a 6-digit code. The door clicked. He left without a word. Arman slipped inside. The room was dim. Rows of metallic drawers lined the walls. He searched under Z, and there it was. A red folder marked Z. Decommissioned. He opened it. Inside were photographs, young men with blank expressions, training exercises, satellite images, and then, toward the back, a photo that stopped Arman's heart. It was the old man, much younger, covered in dirt and blood, kneeling beside a burning structure. In his hand was a rifle. On his shoulder 3 black lines crossing a circle. The tattoo dot behind him stood a man with sharp features and eyes full of rage. The enemy general. The file didn't mention his name, just a code. Subject V. Another document read, Subject V escaped during final operation, presumed dead. No body recovered. Classified threat level, red. Arman stared in disbelief. Subject V was still alive. Could he be the threat the old man spoke about? Then he noticed something else. A sealed envelope at the bottom of the file. On the front, to be opened only by surviving Z11 operative. He looked around. No one was there. He opened it. Inside was a handwritten note. If you're reading this, then I have failed. The ghost lives. And he will come not for countries but for revenge. He knows the tattoo, he knows the names, and he will come where he can hurt us the most, home. Suddenly, alarms blared across the base. Beep beep beep, a voice echoed through the loudspeakers. Unauthorized file access. Level 5 lockdown initiated. Arman panicked. He stuffed the note inside his shirt and ran outside. Chaos had erupted. Lights flashed, gates shut. Guards surrounded the archive building. Officers shouted orders. No one knew what was going on. Back in the command center, Haroun stared at the monitors. Who triggered the alert? A technician said, It looks like someone accessed Z11 records. Haroun clenched his jaw. Who had the code? No one below Captain Ben. Another voice broke through. Shut it down. Everyone turned. The old man had entered the command center. I told you, he said quietly. They're already watching. The moment someone looks into Z11, they act. You've brought this on yourselves. Haroun stepped forward. You don't give orders. Here. The old man walked up to the screen and typed a code. A hidden window opened, a message blinking red. Protocol detected. Ghost tag active. What does that mean? Someone asked. The old man turned to them. It means Subject V is alive, and he just got your location. Everyone froze. Then the screen went black. Only one word remained on it. Run. The room was dark now. Only the word run glowing on the central monitor. No one in the command center moved. Major Haroun stared at the screen like it had just cursed him. The technicians stood frozen, hands above keyboards, unsure whether to keep working or just run like the screen demanded. The only one who wasn't surprised was the old man. He stood still, arms folded, as if he had been expecting this moment for years. What is this? Haroun finally asked, his voice hollow. It's a warning, the old man said, calm and steady. The same one I tried to give you before. Haroun walked toward him slowly. You said he was alive. But this means he's watching us. He never stopped, the old man replied. Not since the last mission. Not since they left me behind. The room fell silent again. A low beep echoed from the console as more screens lit up, displaying static and symbols none of the techs recognized. Private Arman watched from the doorway. He had followed the old man here, ignoring every order to stay away. His heart raced. The stolen letter from the archives still hidden under his shirt? He didn't fully understand what was happening, but he knew one thing. This wasn't training anymore. This was real. And the man everyone had laughed at just days ago was now the only one who seemed to know what to do. Who is he? Arman asked, stepping forward. The old man looked at him. You mean Subject V? Arman nodded. The old man sighed and pulled up a chair. For the first time since arriving, he sat with the weight of his past on full display. He was my shadow, he began. Back in the early missions, we were trained together. Same team, same purpose. He was faster, louder, more brutal. I was told to watch him, to learn from him. Arman leaned in. What happened? He crossed the line, the old man said. Started making decisions outside the mission. Eliminating targets that weren't approved, civilians, informants. He didn't care. To him, the war wasn't about orders. It was about domination. Haroun frowned. Why didn't command pull him out? They tried, the old man said. They sent me to stop him. One bullet to end it. But I hesitated. Why? Arman whispered. Because I believed there was still a man behind those eyes, the old man said softly. I was wrong. The monitors flashed again. A new image appeared, grainy surveillance footage of a desert border post. A convoy of vehicles burning, bodies scattered, and spray painted on the wall in red paint. A symbol, 3 vertical cuts through a circle, the same tattoo as the old man's. Harun stepped back. That's a mockery. He's copying your mark. No, the old man said. He's claiming it, telling me I failed. One of the techs looked up. Sir, this footage is from 2 hours ago. Where? Harun asked. Outskirts of District 14. That's just 70 kilometers from here. Everyone looked at each other. 70 kilometers. That wasn't an enemy at the border. That was someone walking straight toward them. The old man stood up again. He's not hiding anymore. He wants me to know he's close. Harun ran a hand through his hair. We need to alert higher command. Evacuate non-essential personnel. Lockdown. No, the old man interrupted. You do that, and he'll vanish again. He doesn't strike when you're ready. He strikes when you're watching someone else. Armand stepped forward. Then, what do we do? The old man turned to him. We don't panic, we prepare. Quietly, Harun hesitated. I still need authorization. The old man looked at him with a cold stare. You want authorization? Fine. Consider this an activation of Ghost Protocol. You'll find the directive in the black folder under my name. Harun opened a drawer, entered a key code, and pulled out a small black binder. He flipped through it and froze. Inside was a line, handwritten in ink. In case of Subject V's return, allow full operational freedom to Agent 1Z. He looked up. That's you. Yes. The room changed. No more questions. No more doubt. The old man was now in charge. He turned to Arman. You came looking for answers. Time to earn them. That evening, the base was strangely quiet. Drills were canceled. Recruits were sent to early rest. Official word was a communications test scheduled for midnight. But Arman knew better. The old man led him to the abandoned maintenance tunnels beneath the base. It smelled like rust and dust, like no one had walked here in years. They moved silently, past broken pipes and peeling walls until they reached a metal door. Help me, the old man said. Together they pulled it open. Inside was a small room, a cot, a desk, and a wall full of maps. You stayed here? Armand asked, surprised. For the last 3 nights, he said. I couldn't trust a regular bunk, not when I knew he might already be watching. He pointed at the largest map, where red pins marked locations across the country. These are his hits, silent strikes. No survivors. But every time, he leaves the mark. Armin studied the map. He's circling, getting closer. Yes, the old man said. And tonight, he'll be here. A silence stretched between them. Armand finally asked, Why me? Why are you telling me this? The old man didn't look at him. Because you were the only one who didn't laugh when I walked in. That hit Armand harder than he expected. The old man continued. In my line of work, you learn to read people, not just threats, potential, loyalty, silence. You spoke only when it mattered. Armand felt his throat tighten. So what do we do tonight? The old man looked at the clock. We wait. He never attacks blindly. He studies first. There's only one place on this base he'll go. Where? The server room. That's where the archives are. That's where he can erase everything. They left the tunnels and made their way back into the base under the cover of darkness. Inside the server building, they positioned themselves, one near the entrance, one near the central terminal. Hours passed. Nothing. Just the hum of machines and the ticking of a broken wall clock. Then at 2:43. The power flickered. The lights went out. Emergency backup kicked in. Red light bathed the room. Armand raised his pulse rifle, heart thumping in his ears. The old man didn't move. Don't fire unless I tell you, he whispered. Footsteps. Soft, precise. From the ventilation shaft above, a shadow dropped silently into the far corner. Then a voice, cold, smooth. You're slower now, it said. The old man stepped forward. And you still talk too much. Armand turned, and for the first time, saw Subject V. He wasn't just a man. He was built like steel, face sharp, eyes like broken glass. A long scar ran across his jaw, and on his wrist the same tattoo, but burned deep into the skin. You came alone, the old man asked. I never needed help to bury a ghost, Subject V said. Then why didn't you finish it last time? The old man snapped. Because I wanted you to feel it, Subject V said. The guilt, the weight, the years of pretending. You were a hero. I never was. And yet they still gave you medals. Me, they hunted, because you killed innocent people. Innocent, Subject V laughed. They were assets. Just like us, disposable. Armand couldn't take it anymore. You're a monster, he said. Subject V looked at him and smiled. No boy, I'm the truth no one wants to see. Suddenly he pulled a small device from his pocket, a pulse jammer. He threw it into the servers. Sparks flew. The screens went black. Data began erasing. The old man charged. What happened next was too fast for Armand to process. 2 men, old but trained beyond comprehension, clashed. In a storm of fists and fury, blades flashed, blood spilled, tables shattered. Armand tried to help, but was thrown back by a strike he didn't see. Finally, the old man managed to pin Subject V against the wall. This ends tonight. Subject V spat blood. then finish it. The old man hesitated, but this time he didn't stop. One quick, sharp move. Silence. Subject V collapsed. Armand crawled toward them. Trembling. The old man sat down, breathing heavily. It's over. Alarms began blaring again. Reinforcements rushed in. Harun arrived, stunned at the scene. Armand looked at the old man. Are you okay? He nodded. I am now. Then he whispered, just before the medics lifted him, he was right about one thing. What we are all disposable, but we choose how we're remembered. And then he passed out. The corridor outside the infirmary was silent. A quiet more dangerous than battle. The kind that comes when people have seen too much and can no longer lie to themselves. Guards stood at both ends, but their eyes didn't shift. They didn't need orders anymore. They just stood there, watching the door like it might open and tell them something they weren't ready to hear. Inside the room, the old man lay still, his eyes closed, his chest rising and falling with quiet breath. One arm was bandaged. The other lay beside him, uncovered, the tattoo plain as day. The mark that had once been a secret was now a warning. No one dared ask what it truly meant. They had seen it in action, and the man it belonged to was still alive. Armand sat beside the bed. He hadn't left since the fight. His uniform was torn, his knuckles bruised. He hadn't spoken much either. Everyone had questions, but no one came to ask him. Maybe they were afraid, maybe they respected the silence, or maybe they knew Armand would only tell them one thing, the truth. No one wanted to believe that an old man, once mocked and dismissed, had saved them all. And yet, it didn't feel like a victory. He's stable, the medic said, quietly entering the room. But his blood pressure is low, and his heart's been through too much. We don't know how long. She stopped when she saw our face. I'm not leaving him, Armand said. She nodded and stepped out. A few minutes later, the door opened again. This time, it was Major Harun. He carried a sealed folder in his hands and a grim expression on his face. We found something, Harun said softly. Armand looked up. It was in Subject V's jacket, he continued. A drive encrypted, but our techs cracked it. Armand waited. Harun sat in the chair across from him and opened the folder. Inside were photographs, black and white, old war zones, hidden rooms, prisoners, executions. Some photos had names. Most didn't. But one thing was clear. They were all victims of something bigger than war. This was the real mission, Harun said, the one no one spoke of. Subject V wasn't working alone. He had orders too. From deep inside the command, Armand narrowed his eyes. You mean, the government sent him, not just ours, Harun replied. Multiple flags show up in these documents. Collaborations, hidden treaties, things that never made the news. They used Unit Z to eliminate witnesses, bury mistakes, remove people who knew too much. And the old man, Armand asked. He was supposed to be their cleanup, Harun said, but he saw through it. He started protecting, instead of eliminating. That's why they abandoned him. Armand's hands curled into fists. They made him a weapon, then punished him for being human. Harun nodded. He disobeyed an order that day, refused to pull the trigger on a boy who had nothing to do with the mission. Subject V did it instead. That's when everything fell apart. Armand looked at the old man. He's not a ghost. He's a survivor. Harun leaned forward. There's more. He handed Armand a single photo. It showed the old man, younger but still recognizable, standing next to a woman. She wore a medic's badge. In her arms a baby. Armand stared. Who is this? Harun lowered his voice. We ran facial recognition on the woman. Her name was Dr. Amani Tariq, a field surgeon. Worked with resistance groups during the northern conflicts. Went missing 25 years ago, presumed dead, and the baby. We don't know, Harun said. But records show she had a child during those missions. And we believe. When he paused, Armand's eyes widened. You think the old man is the father? Harun nodded. And if he is, there's a chance the child survived. Armand's mind was spinning. Why would Subject V keep this photo on him? Maybe he was hunting the child too, Harun said. To finish what the operation failed to do, or maybe he knew it would shake the old man. Break him. Armand stood up. Then we need to find out. We need to know if there's someone out there who deserves to know the truth. Harun looked hesitant. There's one more thing. He pulled out a second drive. This one was found in the old man's gear. It's labeled 4 Eyes That Still See. What's on it? We haven't opened it. It's locked with voice print access, and only one person can open it. They both turned to look at the bed. Armand stepped closer. Then we wait. Until he wakes up, but they didn't have to wait long. That night, as the stars blinked through the high windows and the base finally slept without fear, the old man opened his eyes. He didn't speak at first, just stared at the ceiling, breathing. Slowly, Armand rushed to his side. You're okay. The old man smiled faintly. That's a lie, but I'll take it. Harun stepped forward. Sir, we found the drives. The old man nodded. Then it's time. Harun handed him the small black device. The old man held it gently, like something fragile. Then he whispered a phrase, Z13 final. Record. The drive lit up. A voice recording began to play. This is Agent 1Z, designation Fahim. If you are hearing this, then the truth has survived longer than expected. I am not proud of what I've done, but I need to explain. The voice was younger, But it was clearly him. We were promised honor, purpose. What we got was orders to kill people who couldn't fight back. I followed them until I couldn't anymore. The day they told me to shoot a mother holding her child, something broke. I ran. I took her and the child, tried to disappear. They found us, killed her. I thought the child was lost too. But if you're hearing this, and you've come this far, maybe that child lived. Arman couldn't breathe. The old man looked at him. Harun whispered, "There's one person who matches the DNA data we extracted from the photo's metadata." Who? The old man asked, barely able to speak. Harun turned slowly to Arman. Silence. Then, gently, the old man reached for Arman's hand. "Your mother? Was she a medic?" Arman nodded slowly. "I never knew her name. I was raised in shelters. Moved from place to place." The old man's eyes filled with tears. "She was brave. She tried to save me when no one else would." Arman whispered, "And you tried to save her?" They both sat in silence. The world outside the room kept spinning, unaware that something had just been restored inside it, a bloodline. A truth. A broken piece of history mended by accident or fate. The old man whispered, "I've watched you since the day you stepped into this base. Something pulled me here. I didn't know what. Until now." Arman said nothing. He didn't have to. He reached out and held the old man's hand. That night, the story that began with mockery had transformed into something no one in the barracks could forget. They still whispered about the tattoo. Still told stories about the mysterious fight, the secret war, the ghost that walked among them. But those closest to it knew the truth. He was never just a ghost. He was a father, and the future was no longer just a battlefield. It was a legacy waiting to be rebuilt. He didn't show up for dinner that night. For the first time since he had arrived, the old man's spot at the end of the table remained empty. The usual metallic clatter of trays, boots, and shouted jokes still echoed through the barracks. But something was missing, something quiet, like the weight of unspoken words. No one dared to ask where he was, but they noticed. Everyone did, especially Keon. The young recruit sat across the table from his usual seat, arms resting on the cold surface, untouched food in front of him. It was like his appetite had vanished along with the old man. His mind kept replaying the way the old man had walked back that afternoon, slow hunched, dragging a hidden storm behind those steady eyes. That night, as others turned in for the night, Keon quietly stepped out of bed and slipped out of the room. He moved past the mess hall, through the hallway lined with medals and dusty photographs of forgotten heroes, and then finally toward the old man's room, room 17. The door was half open. Soft candlelight flickered inside. Keon knocked once, and the old voice answered without surprise. "I was wondering when you'd come." Keon stepped in. The old man was sitting on the bed, shirt folded beside him, revealing his scarred back and the full tattoo that now stretched into the shadows of his shoulder. It wasn't just a military emblem, it was something ancient, something sacred. Beneath it, in ink that had faded but never surrendered, were coordinates and a single word written in a language Keon didn't understand. "I wanted to know," Keon whispered. "What does it mean?" The old man chuckled softly, but there was no joy in it. "It means everything I once fought for, and everything I lost." Keon sat down on the edge of the opposite bed, waiting. "I was younger than you," the old man began, "and more reckless. We were told we were fighting for peace, for freedom, but in truth, we were pieces on a board someone else moved." He looked up, eyes hollow. "They trained us like wolves, dropped us deep into places we weren't meant to be, gave us orders that made no sense. Then when we followed them, we lost our souls." Keon was silent. "There was a village," the old man continued, "hidden in the jungle. We were told it was a rebel hideout, but there were only women, children, old farmers, no weapons, no soldiers. Still, the order came." He turned away. Keon's heart tightened. "You didn't follow it, right?" The old man didn't answer. Outside, a distant thunder rolled across the sky. "After that mission, I walked alone for 3 days," the old man said, "through heat, blood, and regret. And on the 4th day, I came across a wounded boy shot through the leg, bleeding out. He didn't cry, he just looked at me. And you know what he said?" Keon shook his head slowly. He said, "Don't kill me, please. I want to learn." The old man closed his eyes. "So I carried him. For hours, I fed him, I bandaged his leg with my own shirt, and when I finally reached a safe zone, I made a decision. I never went back to the unit. I disappeared." Keon stared in disbelief. "You deserted?" The old man met his eyes. .com/no. I chose peace. Keon was quiet for a long time. "Then why come back now? Why here?" "Because the world still hasn't changed," he said, standing up slowly. "And I can't fight with weapons anymore. But I can fight with truth. Someone needs to show these young men that strength is not just firepower." He paused. "It's compassion, discipline, knowing when not to pull the trigger." At that moment, thunder struck again, but it wasn't the weather. It was the alarm. A loud, urgent siren ripped through the silence of the barracks. Red lights flashed. Within seconds, boots hit the floor, shouts filled the air, and every soldier jumped into action. Emergency protocol. Keon and the old man rushed out of the room. A sergeant ran past them yelling, "Unauthorized perimeter breach. Weapons. Ready?" Chaos erupted in the training yard. Spotlights blazed, rifles were loaded, and all squads formed tight lines. Kian's heart pounded. Then came the call. Southeast fence 5, unidentified figures approaching. Everyone froze. The air was thick with tension. The general's voice barked from the loudspeaker. Hold fire until visual confirmation. But one rookie panicked. He raised his weapon too soon. Finger trembling on the trigger, Kian saw it. So did the old man. Time slowed. The old man leaped forward, grabbed the young soldier's arm just as the rifle went off, his action jerking the aim toward the ground. A single shot echoed into the night, silence followed, and then figures appeared. Not rebels. Not enemies. Civilians. A small family. A woman, an elderly man, and 3 children, dirty, tired, shivering. They had crossed into the base by accident, after fleeing from the nearby forest fire that had engulfed their home. The entire barracks stood frozen in shame. The rookie collapsed to his knees, shaking. The general came forward. Who stopped the shot? The old man didn't speak, but Kian stepped up. He did. Room 17. All eyes turned. The general approached the old man slowly. Then something shifted in his face recognition. You, he said softly. You were Captain Youssef, Operation Ash Mirror. A heavy silence fell. Youssef the legend, the man who had disappeared during one of the darkest missions in classified military history. Rumors had spread that he had died. Some claimed he'd gone mad. Others whispered he had seen something he could never speak of. But no one had ever expected him to walk these grounds again. Now, here he was, saving lives once more. The general slowly stepped back, lowered his head slightly. Every recruit turned to stare. The tattoo, the silence, the past. It all made sense now. Kian looked around at the men who had once laughed behind the old man's back, calling him weak, broken, useless. Not anymore. That night, the family was given shelter. The recruits sat quietly in the hall, the storm outside mirroring the storm within their hearts. No one spoke, until one voice broke the silence. Kian, he stood. Sir, he said to Youssef, will you teach us? The old man looked up, surprised. I mean really teach us, Kian added. Not just drills, not just shooting, but what you know, who you are. One by one, other recruits nodded. It was no longer mockery in their eyes, it was respect. The general said nothing, but he didn't stop it. Youssef gave a small nod. I will, but only if you're ready to learn not just how to fight, but how to choose your battles. And just like that, the weakest man in the barracks became the one everyone followed. But what no one knew was that this moment was only the beginning, because the past Youssef had run from MHS, far away, in a silent room, filled with old files and sealed envelopes. A letter was opened. A shadowed figure looked down at the contents, eyes narrowing. He whispered, so, he's alive. Then picked up a phone. Activate the list. The old man stood alone in the fading light of the training ground. Around him, the younger soldiers whispered, pointing at his slow movements, at the way he held his back, the way his boots were always covered in dust like he'd walked through some forgotten past. But today was different. Today, something changed. General Rahim had arrived. Everyone stood still when they saw his convoy roll into the barracks. He wasn't just any officer. He was known to have lead special covert units, men who never spoke, missions that never made it to the newspapers. His presence meant something serious was coming. All soldiers were lined up, and among them stood the old man, eyes steady, shoulders straight. Captain Amir was confused. He had seen this man clean floors, fix pipes, deliver letters, never salute, never command. Why was he standing there with the troops? General Rahim scanned the line. His sharp eyes paused when they reached the old man. For a moment, no one breathed. Then, slowly, General Rahim stepped forward. You, he said, pointing. The old man didn't flinch. Come forward. The soldiers stared, expecting the old man to panic or tremble. Instead, he stepped out of line with a calmness no one understood. General Rahim looked him straight in the eyes. Then, without warning, he saluted. A crisp, full salute. The entire barracks went silent. No one had ever seen General Rahim salute anyone first. It's an honor to see you again, sir, he said. The young soldiers exchanged glances. Was this some kind of test? Who was this man? The old man nodded. I never expected to be needed again. Later that night, rumors spread like fire. Some said the old man had once saved General Rahim's life. Others believed he was part of some secret task force, but no one knew the truth. Only that General Rahim had addressed him as Sir. The next morning, the old man was gone from the janitor's quarters. Instead, he was seated in the strategy room. Captain Amir was called in. When he entered, he saw General Rahim and the old man seated at a table, maps spread out before them. Captain, General Rahim said, this is Commander Zion. Amir froze. Commander, yes, the old man said softly. Once, long ago, Rahim continued, he trained the best of our forces, retired after a mission that no one returned from, except him. Amir's throat went dry. Why didn't anyone know? Because he didn't want anyone to know, Rahim replied. Over the next few days, Zion became a ghost and a presence. He didn't appear during meals, but when soldiers returned to their bunks, they'd find their gear perfectly aligned. training dummies fixed, or coded notes, left with feedback. At first they mocked it, then they realized whoever was leaving those notes knew things only experienced operatives knew. One morning, a young soldier Naveed found Zion outside the obstacle course. "Sir," he asked hesitantly. Zion didn't respond. He just gestured for him to try the course. Naveed had never completed it before. It was tough, but under Zion's silent observation, something changed. Every time Naveed paused, Zion gave a slight nod or tilt of his head. He didn't yell, he didn't clap, but his quiet presence pushed Naveed further. For the first time he completed the course. Breathless, he turned back. "Thank you, sir," Zion simply said. "You had it in you." Word spread. Slowly, soldiers began seeking him out. Not for orders, but for guidance. Not for approval, but for belief. Zion never spoke of his past. He only spoke of what each man could become. Then came the first test. A group of cadets had gone missing during a training hike near the mountains. A storm was coming. The signals were lost. Panic grew. Search teams were slow due to the rough terrain. That night, as the base scrambled, Zion quietly picked up a map, marked a trail, and handed it to Captain Amir. "They're here," he said, pointing. "There's a small cave near the old radio tower. They would have gone there for shelter." Amir looked at him. "Are you sure?" Zion said nothing, just looked out the window. Rahim stepped in. "Send a team now." Amir led the rescue. Hours later, just before dawn, they found the cadets cold, scared, but alive exactly where Zion had said that morning. Something shifted in the hearts of the men. They no longer saw an old man. They saw a legend. But legends, too, have wounds. That evening, Zion was alone, looking at an old black and white photo. 5 young men, standing side by side, arms around each other, faces full of life. On the back, it read Unit Echo, the ones who never blinked. General Rahim entered quietly. "You missed them," Zion nodded. Every day Rahim placed a hand on his shoulder. "They would be proud of what you're doing now." Zion didn't reply, but his eyes shimmered. The next day, the training schedule was updated. All elite-level drills were to be supervised by Commander Zion. Many were shocked, but no one questioned it. The first session was brutal. Zion didn't yell, he watched. When someone failed, he didn't scold. He showed them. Even at his age, his movements were precise, controlled, efficient. He disarmed 2 younger men using only footwork and calm pressure. One soldier whispered, "He's not just teaching us to fight. He's teaching us to think." But shadows were rising. Word reached Rahim that a former enemy commander, long presumed dead, was alive and planning something. His code name was Mexad. Years ago, Zion had led a mission against him. They both had survived. Barely. Zion had never spoken of that mission. Now, he stood once again before a board covered with files and reports. He stared at one blurred image. It was Mexad. "He's back," Zion whispered, "and he'll come here for me." The room froze. "Why?" Amir asked. "Because I'm the only one who ever beat him," Zion said. The base grew tense. Petrov's increased. Rahim held emergency meetings. But Zion stayed calm. He doesn't come with noise. He waits, watches, and strikes where we're weakest. "And where are we weakest?" Amir asked. Zion looked around. In our overconfidence, later that night, Zion walked through the sleeping barracks. He saw the men young, strong, full of life, and he felt fear. Not for himself, but for them. He knew Mexad wouldn't attack like a soldier. He would come like a ghost. The next day, a letter arrived. No sender. Just one line written in red ink. "Let's finish what we started." Zion held the letter tightly. He turned to Rahim. "We prepare them not for war but for the mind of war. And you?" Rahim asked. "I prepare myself to face the nightmare I left behind." That night, as soldiers trained under the moonlight, Zion stood watching, silent, ready, but deep in his heart. He knew this time, the past wouldn't just knock. It would break the door down, and far away. Under the cover of a storm, Mexad was already moving. The storm that night refused to let the soldiers sleep. The thunder was loud enough to shake the metal roofs of the barracks, and lightning lit up the entire training ground like day. But inside the far-left cabin, not a single sound came from the bunk where the old man Saeed now rested after the long march. His eyes were open, staring at the wooden planks above. Across the room, young cadet Aslan sat silently on his bed. He couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what Saeed had whispered to him during the mission. "This ground was not always yours, but I helped make it so." The words haunted him. Azlan was no longer sure if this old man was who they thought he was. The tattoo, the sudden strength, the way the lieutenant changed his tone the moment he saw Saidin of it added up. He needed answers. But there was fear in him now. What if Saeed wasn't just a former soldier? What if he was something more? Something forgotten? The next morning came slow, with fog hiding the sun. The morning drill was cancelled due to the storm damage. Soldiers gathered to clean up the training grounds. Branches, broken wires, fallen sandbags. While most of them grumbled about the work, Saeed was already outside, pushing heavy sandbags. With ease, guiding others on how to stack them properly to avoid flooding. Some of the younger ones still whispered behind his back, "Why is he still here? He's too old, slows us down." But others had started to notice. Captain Farouk, the officer in charge of logistics, stood by the gate and watched Saeed from a distance. "He moves like he's done this 100 times before," muttered to himself. "Who is he?" By mid-afternoon the colonel returned from headquarters. He had been briefed about the incident in the mountains, the flash flood, the way Saeed had led the squad back, but it wasn't the rescue that shocked him. It was a name in the report. Colonel Amir called Lieutenant Kamal into his office, mentioned a tattoo on his wrist, a wolf holding an eagle's wing. Kamal nodded, confused. "Yes, sir?" Colonel Amir went quiet for a long time. Then he slowly opened the drawer and pulled out an old military journal. He flipped the pages, each one yellowed with age, and stopped at a photo. He slid it across the table. "That mark," he said, tapping the wrist of a young soldier in the photo. "You saw it?" Kamal leaned forward. His mouth went dry. It was the same tattoo. "Who is that, sir?" The colonel looked straight at him. "That's Ghost Squad, a special unit, disbanded years ago. Operated in the most dangerous missions that never made the news." "You think it's him?" Kamal asked. "I don't think," Amir said. "I know." That evening, a meeting was called. All officers above a certain rank were ordered to attend. The topic: identity verification and protocol around former classified personnel. Saeed was called in. He walked in calmly, wearing the same uniform, though it hung loosely around his shoulders. He saluted with the kind of sharpness that made everyone in the room go quiet. For a moment, they were no longer looking at an old man, they were looking at someone dangerous. Someone precise. Colonel Amir stood. "Do you confirm your name as Saeed Raza?" Saeed nodded. "Yes, sir." "Do you confirm you once served in the 9th Special Reconnaissance Unit?" Saeed's jaw clenched. "Yes, sir." "And did you also serve in the classified division, codenamed Ghost Squad?" A silence filled the room. Everyone leaned in slightly. Saeed took a breath, then nodded. "I did." The room went completely still. One of the junior captains whispered under his breath, "No way, Colonel." Amir took another step forward. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Saeed looked around. His voice was calm but full of pain. "Because the world forgot us, and I chose to forget with it. But when I saw these boys young, proud, lost in ego, I remembered why we fought in the first place." Lieutenant Kamal looked down, ashamed. Azlan, standing at the back, felt his heart beat faster. This wasn't just a man who had stories. This was a man who was the story. One they never taught in their training. After the meeting, word spread. Like wildfire, the barracks were no longer filled with mocking whispers. Now there was silence, respect, even fear. Saeed walked past soldiers who now stood straighter in his presence. No one dared call him weak again. But something else happened. That night, Saeed found a letter slipped under his door. It had no name, just a question. Why did they really disband Ghost Squad? He stared at it for a long time, then burned it in the metal trash can, watching the flames eat the paper slowly. But he knew the question would return, because the truth wasn't simple, and not everyone wanted it out. The next day, Aslan approached him. "Sir, I want to learn from you. Not just about fighting, about everything, please." Saeed looked at the boy's eyes. They were still young, but there was a fire in them now, a humility that hadn't been there before. "You want the truth?" Saeed asked. Aslan nodded. "Then, you need to know what we did in 2001, in the Northern Valley, and why none of us came back the same." Before Aslan could speak, a loud voice echoed from the loudspeakers. "Emergency drill. All units assemble at Field 4. Repeat, emergency drill. Immediate assembly required." They rushed out. But in the control room, Colonel Amir stared at a grainy satellite image. 3 figures, armed, moving fast toward the southern border. One of them had a symbol on his jacket, a wolf holding an eagle's wing, just like Saeed's tattoo. Only this time, the wolf's eyes were bleeding red. "Is that possible?" Captain Farouk asked. "Is Ghost Squad still active?" Amir shook his head. "They were disbanded. But what if someone brought it back, unofficially?" Saeed, now standing quietly near the drill field, looked up at the sky. The air had shifted. He could feel it, not in his bones but in his memory. And what was coming wasn't just war, it was a reckoning. General Hallam's face was cold, but his eyes betrayed a mix of shock and awe. He had called the old man useless, a burden, an outsider who didn't belong in a training base full of proud young cadets. But when the wind lifted the old man's sleeve and revealed that faded tattoo, a black eagle wrapped around a sword with coordinates, below silence had fallen. No one spoke. No one moved. Now, hours later, the mood in the barracks was tense. The recruits, once full of arrogance and mockery, were whispering among themselves. Even LT Dar had lowered his voice. They all waited. For what? They didn't know. The old man, who had spent weeks cleaning floors and carrying water barrels, now walked past them with a quiet power none could explain. Zishan sat on his bunk, unable to shake what he had seen. He remembered laughing when the old man had tripped carrying a bucket. He remembered calling him Baba Loser. Now he only felt shame. Where did he come from? He whispered to Salman beside him. That tattoo? It means he's a shadow falcon, doesn't it? Salman nodded. My uncle served. He told me only 6 men were ever marked with that symbol. They were ghosts used for missions the army never admits to, but they all died, Zacian said. Didn't they? Maybe not all, Salman replied. In the commanding office, General Hallam was reviewing old classified files. His hands trembled as he opened the sealed red folder marked Project Serpent Eyes Only. And there it was. A photo from 1989, 6 soldiers standing in the snow near the border of Kunar. One face was circled. Below it, in red ink, codename WOLF, Wolf, Hallam whispered. His phone buzzed. It was Colonel Remond, sir. Permission to speak. Speak. We've confirmed it. The tattoo is real. His fingerprint matches the record. It's Major Aftab Khan, presumed KIA in 95. Presumed, Halim said quietly, but not dead. He closed the file. The base needed to know the truth, not through an announcement, but through action. The next day, orders were given. All recruits would undergo an endurance test. Unannounced. Grueling mountain march. 40 kilometers. Full gear. Midnight start. They gathered in the freezing dark, annoyed and confused. What's this madness? Cried Tariq. We're not ready. Zishan looked around. The old man was there silent watching. Not in uniform. Not even wearing boots. Just those same dusty sandals. No one dared laugh now. The whistle blew. The march began. Snow began falling. Within an hour, legs were shaking. 3 cadets collapsed. After 10 kilometers, another 5 gave up. My ankle, someone cried. I can't breathe. At 15 kilometers, even Zeshin fell to his knees. He was ready to quit. Then he saw something in the distance. The old man, walking ahead, carrying 2 full canteens. No jacket, no gloves, just a calm, steady pace. Who is he? Zacian gasped. No one knows, someone replied. But he hasn't stopped once. At 20 kilometers, the blizzard hit. Cadets screamed. Visibility dropped. The road disappeared. Panic set in. That's when the old man stepped forward. Without a word, he took the lead. One by one, they followed him. Like moths to light. He moved with confidence, as if he knew every inch of the mountain. Step left, he said once. And a second later, a landslide crashed where they had stood. By the time they reached the checkpoint, only 12 cadets had made it. All half frozen, all humbled. The old man handed each of them a blanket, built a fire, said nothing. Later, back at base, Dar saluted him. That moment changed everything. The next day, General Hallam asked him to speak to the entire unit. For the first time, the old man stood on the front stage. His voice was deep, steady, but soft. I am not here to be honored, he began. I came because I wanted to see if courage still lives here, not in your arms, not in your medals, but in your hearts. He looked at Zishan. You laughed at me, called me weak. But I once crawled through enemy trenches with 2 broken legs to save a comrade. Not because I was strong, but because I had no other choice. Then his voice dropped, lower. I have watched friends die in my arms. I've buried brothers with my bare hands. And for what? So you could grow up free. So you could be proud soldiers. No one moved. He looked at the youngest cadet. Your real enemy isn't across the border. It's inside you. Arrogance, fear, ego, that's what I came to fight. Silence. Then, one by one, cadets began to stand, saluting, every single one of them. When he turned to leave the stage, Zacian stood before him. He bent his head. Sir, I'm sorry. The old man smiled faintly. One day, you'll lead. Just remember, never judge a man by the dust on his shoes. That night, as the barracks dimmed, Zacian stared at the ceiling. Something in him had shifted. He had seen a ghost, a living legend, and he wasn't afraid anymore. But as sleep came, the last thing he remembered was the way the old man had looked toward the north, toward the mountains, as if something unfinished still waited there. And far away, in an abandoned radio tower, near the old border, a light blinked. Someone else had noticed the tattoo, and they were not done with him yet. The night was quiet again, but this time, it wasn't the usual quiet of discipline or routine. It was the heavy silence that follows the discovery of something no one truly understands. The old man, who had once mopped floors and served food now, sat in the war room across from General Hallam. The 2 men had barely spoken during the long hours of snow and silence, but now they looked each other in the eye as equals. You should have stayed dead, Hallam said softly, the old man known now. Only as Major Aftab didn't blink. I did for a long time, but silence is not peace. Halim leaned back, studying him. So why return? Why now? Aftab looked down at the file on the table. It was a recent report from the intelligence unit read. Stamped and marked urgent. The coordinates matched the old code names, the same ones tattooed beneath. The black eagle on his arm because they're not gone, he said flatly. The ones who betrayed us, the ones who left me and the others too. Die. They've returned. General Hallam's face paled slightly. He had read whispers and reports. Suspected movements in border areas, smuggling. Patterns, strange disappearances. But no one had ever confirmed it until now. You think it's them? Aftab nodded. Not just think. I know they're rebuilding training and they've already planted people in your ranks. Halim closed the file, his fingers tapping the table. How long years? Aftab said. They've been patient watching. Growing, they believe we've gone soft, and in many ways we have. Halim stood up, walked to the window, and stared out at the distant hills. You want access to the cadets? Not all of them, Aftab replied. Just one group. The ones who marched that night, the ones who saw what they weren't supposed to see. They're not ready yet, but they can be, if given the right reasons. Halim didn't turn around. You'll be responsible for them then. No more hiding, no more silence. Agreed, Aftab said. Within days, the base changed. Recruits were assigned a new unit call sign Wolf Squad. Their mission was unclear even to themselves, but they trained differently now. Harder, faster, and under no standard schedule, Aftab taught. Bem's survival without maps, combat without weapons, trust without promises. He spoke little, but when he did, even the toughest among them listened. Zishan had become a silent observer of everything, taking notes even when not asked. He watched how Aftab walked into a space and every soldier shifted, how even Colonel Riemann had started deferring to him, and yet the old man still cleaned his own mess, still polished his boots, still refused the officers' quarters one. Morning, Aftab handed Z a sealed letter, read it, but only after dark, he said, and walked away confused. Zayshin waited until lights out, then opened it. The handwriting was clean, sharp, in it were coordinates, and a sentence. This is where it all began, and where it will end. Meet me there alone. He folded the paper, heart racing. The coordinates pointed to a cave system just outside the border area marked as inactive for years. It was suicide to go there alone, but Zishan didn't hesitate. He slipped out at midnight, navigating by stars and memory. The mountains were cruel and the air was thin, but he kept going. After 4 hours, he reached the spot and froze. Aftab was already there, standing before a sealed cave wall. You came, he said without turning. Why? Zishan asked. Why me? Aftab took a breath. Because you still have doubt, and doubt is the last fire before truth. Either it burns away or consumes you. Then he moved a rock slab and revealed a hidden metal door. He pressed a code, and it clicked open. Inside was darkness and silence, and then lights dim, and red flickered on. They walked through a long tunnel, and into a room filled with rusted weapons files, old uniforms, blood-stained flags, and photos of men with black eagles on their arms. This was our last base, Aftab said. When the operation collapsed, they locked us in here, bombed the exit, and told the world we were dead. You survived, Zeshin whispered. I survived, Aftab nodded, because someone pulled me out. A farmer who never told a soul. He died last year but left me this. He held up a worn photo of 6 young men, one of whom was him, smiling with pride. But this isn't just history, Aftab continued. It's a warning. They're trying to rebuild this place, to use it again for their own agenda, and they're using your faces to do it, young cadets. Idealistic, patriotic, blind to how power can be twisted. Zishan looked around, chills running down his back. So what now? Now, Aftab said, we burn it down for good, and we start preparing for what's coming. Which is? Zishan asked, voice shaking. A war that won't be fought on borders, but within our own walls. They spent the next hours planting charges, not just explosives, but hidden signal jammers, anti-surveillance traps, and a beacon for intelligence teams. When they emerged, the sun was rising red against the snow. You're not the same, Aftab said. You saw the past. Now decide your future. And with that, they returned to base. No one noticed they were gone. No one asked back at the barracks. Zayshin gathered the wolf squad, told them what he could without revealing too much, and for the first time they all listened. No mockery, no ego. They were a unit now, forged not by drills but by shadows and secrets. That night, General Hallam called a private meeting with Aftab. You were right, he said, handing over fresh intel. They've made contact with someone high-level. Our intercept team heard code words from the old files. One word keeps repeating. Phoenix. Aftab froze for the first time. His expression cracked. He's alive, he said. Halim frowned. Who? The one who betrayed us all? The one who gave the order to lock us in the cave and bury the file? The original commander of the Shadow Falcons, codename Phoenix, but real name Brigadier Saeed Anwar. That's impossible, Halim said. He died in a helicopter crash 15 years ago. No, Aftab said, his voice ice. He disappeared, he never died, and now he's back to finish what he started. Suddenly, a siren blared. Base lockdown was announced. Guards ran everywhere. A message played over the speaker's unauthorized transmission. Detected signal breach in command line Alpha. Aftab and Halim looked at each other, both understanding. In that moment, the past had just walked back into the present, and the real war had begun. In the distance, hidden far beyond satellite eyes, in an underground chamber, a figure watched a screen showing the wolf squad in training. His face aged but sharp. He tapped a finger slowly and whispered, "Hello, Aftab, you found your voice again. Let's see how loud it really is." The sky over the barracks was heavy with clouds, and the air felt different, as if everyone was holding their breath. After everything that had happened with General Karnov and the surprise inspection that turned into a lesson of humility for the entire base, the soldiers had stopped whispering behind the old man's back. The mocking had vanished. Something had shifted. Now they watched him not with pity, but with a quiet kind of respect they didn't yet understand. All because of that tattoo. The dragon wrapped in fire, carved into his skin like a scar of time, had silenced even the loudest mouths. But there were still questions no one dared to ask. Until today, Private Zaid stepped forward. The voice of Colonel Riemann called during the morning drill. Zaid's heart jumped. He wasn't expecting to be called today. He had cleaned his boots, fixed his locker, and even helped in the kitchen early just to stay out of sight. As he walked forward, he saw the colonel nod toward the old man standing silently near the training field. "You're with Sergeant Arif today." One-on-one training. Zaid's throat dried. Him alone with Arif. No one trained alone with him since the tattoo was revealed. No one even asked him questions anymore. And now Zaid had to spend an entire day under his guidance. But he nodded. "Yes, sir." Later that day, out in the forest training course, Zaid struggled to keep up. Arif moved faster than anyone had a right to at his age. His movements were clean, sharp, efficient, like he was born in the middle of a battlefield. They were supposed to simulate a hostage recovery, but Arif kept changing the situation on the fly, throwing in unexpected turns and dangers. Zaid tripped twice, missed 2 targets, lost a dummy hostage once. He was exhausted, humiliated, but not once did Arif raise his voice. Instead, he said something strange. "You remind me of someone." Zaid paused, catching his breath. "Sir?" "Someone who also doubted himself, who was also laughed at. Until one day, he wasn't." Zaid stared at him, unsure what to say. Then, after a long silence, he asked the question that had burned in every young recruit's mind since that day the tattoo was revealed. "Sir, that tattoo? What is it? Why does it scare the officers more than a warhead?" Arif didn't answer immediately. He knelt near the fake hostage, adjusted its straps gently like it was real. Then he looked up, his eyes distant. "Because it's not just a mark, it's a name. A name." Arif sat down on a nearby log, motioning Zaid to sit too. The forest was quiet around them. The world slowed. His voice dropped, almost a whisper. "Called it the Ghost Battalion. We weren't supposed to exist. No country admitted we were theirs. No medal ever carried our names. We worked in shadows. The tattoo was our only proof we lived." Zaid's mouth opened. "You were part of a ghost unit." "We were more than that," Arif said. "We were chosen because we had nothing to lose. Or so they thought. But they were wrong. We had everything to lose. That made us dangerous. Why did it end? Because one day, we said no." His eyes grew colder. "We were ordered to burn a village. Said it was harboring enemies. But it was a lie. Just people, children, old women. One of us refused. The rest followed. We disobeyed a direct order. We became enemies of the state overnight." Zaid leaned forward, stunned. "What happened?" "They hunted us down. We ran for years. Some of us died in hiding. Some disappeared. And a few." He paused. "A few joined again under different names. I buried Arif Khan that day, but he keeps finding ways to breathe again." Zaid felt his hands shake. This wasn't just a soldier. This was living history. A man who had carried secrets heavier than weapons. "Why come here, sir? Why now?" Arif looked at the sky. "Because, when I saw this country tearing itself apart again, I knew it needed soldiers who could think with their hearts, not just pull triggers. I came here to watch, to teach one, maybe 2, enough to start something again." Zaid felt his chest tighten. "Am I one of them?" Arif didn't smile, but his eyes warmed. "You could be, if you're willing to listen with more than your ears." They sat for a while in silence. Zaid didn't need to speak. Something was shifting inside him, a strange kind of courage. Not the loud kind that shouted during drills, but the quiet kind that stood firm when others fled. The training session ended. Back at the barracks, word had already spread that Arif had spoken, that he'd shared something, but no one knew what. Zaid didn't speak, he didn't share, but his posture changed. His eyes too, the colonel noticed. That night, Zaid sat in his bunk, staring at the moonlight through the window, still hearing Arif's words echoing. But then came the knock, soft, sharp. Then again, he opened the door. A tall man in a dark coat stood there, face half hidden in shadow. "Your Private Zaid?" "Yes." The man handed him an envelope and left without a word. Inside was a photo, a younger Arifi surrounded by men in black uniforms, half their faces blurred, and beneath it, a note written in careful handwriting. "You're not ready yet, but you're close." Zaid's hands trembled. He turned the photo over. There, scribbled in red ink, were coordinates in one line. "Do not tell anyone. Meet me in 3 days. Come alone." Zaid's heart raced. The Ghost Battalion wasn't a myth, it was real. And now, it was calling him. Zaid couldn't sleep that night. The photo burned in his mind like a secret he wasn't ready to carry. The red coordinates scratched into the back felt like they were pulsing in his hands, whispering something old and dangerous. What was this? Place? Why now, and why him? Arif hadn't said anything when they returned from the training field. He didn't even look at Zaid. It was like their whole conversation in the forest never happened. But Zaid knew something had changed. He could feel it. The weight of the truth now sat on his shoulders. The next morning, he packed carefully. Just the basics: some dried food, a small first aid kit, a map, and the compass that his father had once given him. He marked the coordinates from the photo. It was deep in the mountains, far beyond the last checkpoint, past where they were allowed to go. Anyone caught heading there without permission could be court-martialed, but this wasn't about rules anymore. This was about something bigger, something forgotten. He slipped out before dawn. The guards at the gate barely noticed him. He moved like a shadow. Years of training had taught him how to blend in, how to walk like he belonged. Still, as he walked away from the base, he felt a strange tingle on the back of his neck, like eyes. Watching, he glanced around, but saw no one. Just trees, birds, and the soft echo of boots on dirt. But the feeling didn't leave. The journey took hours. He climbed hills, crossed frozen streams, and walked through quiet woods that felt older than time itself. As he got closer to the marked point, the air grew colder. He paused at the top of a ridge and pulled out the map, just a few kilometers more. Then he saw an old radio tower in the distance, half collapsed, with rusted steel bones sticking into the sky. That was the spot. He started toward it, moving faster now. Halfway there, he froze. A flicker, a flash of movement to his left. He ducked behind a rock, listened, a soft crunch. Someone was there. He wasn't alone. He waited, heart pounding. A minute passed, then another, and then says two of them. Close, you sure he's heading here? Positive. Got the signal from the envelope. Trackers live. Tracker. His blood ran cold. The photo, the envelope, someone had placed a tracker on it. This wasn't just about Arif anymore. Someone else was involved. Zaid stayed low and crawled carefully away from the voices. He couldn't lead them to the tower. Not yet. He needed answers first. And whoever these people were, they weren't on RF's side. He looped around the hill, staying low, moving through thick brush. When he reached the tower from the back side, he climbed a narrow, rocky path. The structure creaked in the wind. At the base of the tower was a door, hidden behind twisted metal. He knocked 3 times, paused, knocked twice. Then once, it opened. Inside stood Arif, alone. No uniform, no weapons. Just his eyes, sharp and calm. You were followed. Zaid nodded. I know, Arif said. Come in. Zaid stepped inside. It was a small bunker built under the tower, dusty, cold, but filled with old maps. Sealed boxes and communication equipment that looked too advanced for a retired soldier. Who are they? Zaid asked. Old ghosts? Not from my unit. From the ones who buried us. Zaid looked confused. When we refused that last order, all those years ago, Arif said slowly, they didn't just hunt us. They covered every trace, burned every document, erased every record. But a few of us held on to the truth. We knew one day someone would ask the right questions. And now they're trying to erase you again. Arif gave a sad smile. They never stopped. But lately, they've been more desperate. That's how I knew it was time to move. Why involve me? Because you still believe in something. I saw it, and you're smart enough to stay silent, even when it hurts. Zaid stared at the old man. What do you want from me? Arif opened a locker and pulled out a file. Thick, worn. He handed it to Zaid. Inside is everything. Names, missions, proof. If anything happens to Methus, needs to get out. Zaid hesitated. Why not send it to the military, to the press? Arif's voice dropped. Because the people who buried us, they're still inside, still powerful. Some even wear stars on their shoulders. You give this to the wrong hands, and it disappears forever. Zaid looked down at the file. It was heavier than it looked. Suddenly an explosion outside. The ground shook. They're here, Arif whispered. He moved fast, grabbing 2 pistols and tossing one to Zaid. Not fire unless they see you. Follow me. They exited through a back tunnel that led under the hills. Gunshots echoed behind them. Whoever was after them wasn't here to arrest. They were here to kill. For hours they moved through old escape tunnels. Finally, they reached a hidden outpost buried beneath a mountain ridge. Inside were maps, radio equipment, and one dusty picture frame of 6 soldiers and Black Arif among them. We stay here tonight, Arif said. At dawn, you go alone. Zaid looked at him. What about you? I've done my part. That night, Zaid read parts of the file. What he found made his skin crawl. Missions buried under fake names. Villages erased. Soldiers executed not for failure, but for compassion. And then, photos. One of them showed a younger Colonel current commander standing beside a general with a blood-stained record. Zaid's world tilted. Sir, he whispered. My colonel, he was part of this. Arif nodded. One of the few who rose higher after our unit fell. He knows exactly who I am. That's why they let me rot in that barracks. They thought I was broken, harmless. But he let me train with you. He didn't. That wasn't his order. That was mine. Zaid sat in silence. Everything he believed, about the army, about his duty, felt like glass breaking in his chest. The next morning, as the sun rose behind jagged cliffs, Arif handed Zaid a bag. There's a man in Rawalpindi. Name's Khalin, former journalist, now in hiding. He's one of the last who tried to expose this mess. Give him this file. He'll know what to do. Zaid took the bag, but before he could leave, Arif stopped him. There's one more thing. He rolled up his sleeve and pulled back a cloth from his arm. Another tattoo one Zaid hadn't seen. It wasn't a dragon. It was a phoenix. Some of us believed we could rise again, even from ash. Zaid left alone with the file, with the truth, but as he made his way down the hills, he noticed a shadow in the trees. A sniper's dot flickered briefly on the rock near his feet. They were still watching, still hunting, and now he was their next target. The sun was rising over the base, golden light hitting the windows of the mess hall where a silence more powerful than any order had taken hold. Every soldier, every officer, Every officer, every eye was on Colonel Rayon. No one moved. No one dared breathe. Too loud. After all the days of doubt, mockery, secret whispers, and open judgment, they now stood in front of a man who had nothing to prove, yet proved everything. Not with words, but with honor. Rayon stood calmly, his back straight, arms by his side, his eyes firm. The tattoo, the mark that had once made them question him, had become their silent guide, not because of what it looked like, but because of what it meant. Each curve of the ink carried battles won, lives saved, and losses he never spoke about. That morning, Rayon had arrived without his cane. For the first time since his assignment to the base, he walked unassisted across the drill yard. His limp was still there, but it didn't matter anymore. His steps were heavy with meaning. As he crossed through the path of soldiers standing at attention, none turned their eyes. Instead, they saluted a long, powerful salute that moved in perfect sequence down the line. Lieutenant Kabir was among them. The same Kabir who once called Rayon too slow for field review, who had scoffed when Rayon tried to lead a briefing. Today Kabir's eyes were wet. He wasn't ashamed of it. He stood tall, stiff in salute, and when Rayon passed him, he said loud enough for all to hear, "Respect, sir." That moment, the entire yard erupted in a powerful chorus. "Respect, sir." Over and over, soldiers shouting it with pride, no longer mocking, no longer hiding behind rank or fear. It wasn't just about Rayon anymore. It was about realizing how wrong they had been. About age, about weakness, about strength. They had misjudged a legend. While all of this was happening, Rayon just kept walking, his eyes fixed on the distant training ground where new recruits were lining up. He had made a decision, one final act before stepping away. Inside the barracks office, the general had been watching from the window. He turned to Major Zoya, who stood beside him, arms crossed, face unreadable. The general said, "This base has never been this unified." Zoya nodded, her voice calm. "It wasn't unity, sir. It was silence and pride, pretending to be discipline." Rayon turned it into respect. A few hours later, Rayon gathered the recruits, young, energetic, full of fire but unshaped. He told them the truth, not about medals, not about missions, but about fear, about what it feels like to freeze in a minefield, about carrying wounded brothers under enemy fire, about living with decisions that no one else would understand. And finally, he pointed to the tattoo on his forearm. "This is not decoration. This is memory. I didn't earn it in ink. I earned it in pain, in silence, and in staying alive when I wanted to quit." They didn't clap. They didn't cheer. They just listened, eyes wide, mouths closed, hearts open. Some of them wouldn't forget that moment for the rest of their lives. The next day, an official notice was pinned outside the command center. Colonel Rayon was retiring. He had declined the usual ceremony. Instead, he requested one thing: to leave in the morning. Alone, without a guard of honor, without speeches. But that's not what happened. When he walked out the gate at sunrise, over 300 soldiers had lined the path, in full dress, standing shoulder to shoulder, not because of duty, because of choice. Not one of them had been ordered to show up. Kabir had spread the word through hushed whispers and private messages. They all came as Rayon passed. They didn't cheer. They tapped their boots once on the ground in perfect rhythm. Just one tap each. A sound that echoed like thunder across the base. The sound of farewell from warriors who had learned what true strength meant. Outside the gate, a black jeep waited for him. The driver was a civilian in his 20s. Nervous, unfamiliar with the weight of what he was witnessing. "Sir, I'm here to take you to the city. Orders from command," he said. Rayan nodded and opened the back door. But before getting in, he looked back one last time. That's when he saw her, a young woman, barely 18, standing behind the final row of soldiers. She wore a civilian scarf, but her eyes were fierce, determined. Around her wrist was a simple string, and black, just like the one Rayon had tied around his boot during his years of service. She stepped forward. "I'm joining next month," she said quietly. "You're the reason." Rayon didn't speak. He only gave a small smile, the kind that carried 100 stories. Then he stepped into the jeep, and the doors closed. The vehicle moved away. Something strange happened. The soldiers didn't break formation. They stood there until the jeep vanished in the morning haze. Back in the city, a small apartment awaited Rayon. No military guards, no grand home, just peace. That night, he sat by his window, a cup of tea in his hand, watching the world pass slowly. On his table lay a box, old wooden, sealed for years. He opened it. Inside were medals, letters, and one photograph. A team of 6 soldiers. One of them, younger Rayon, smiled with a hand around a friend who never made it home. Under the photo was a note, worn and faded. It read, "If you ever feel forgotten, remember somewhere someone still carries your story." Rayon closed the box gently and placed it back on the shelf. He didn't need recognition anymore. He didn't need noise. He had become a story, a memory, a silent salute in the hearts of every soldier who now knew what strength truly looked like. And in the barracks where he once limped through whispers and judgment, now stood a framed painting. It showed a quiet old man walking across the yard. No caption, no medals, just that tattoo on his arm. Below it, 3 simple words were engraved: "He changed everything."